Everyone, thanks for coming today. I'm Kurt Asher. I'm Dean of the Library, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our speaker today and enjoying some pizza with you. I'm sure we all will enjoy escaping from our current world at the moment. This is the fifth time that musicologist Lily Hirsch is presented here. This one is going to be a little lighter-hearted than her usual fare, which is usually relates to the Holocaust or some kind of sad and tragic event. So this is a different type of thing. She's the author of 5 books. She received her PhD in musicology from Duke University, and she was formerly a music professor in Ohio, right? Yeah. Well, I could read you the titles, but I'm not going to. I'm going to just turn this over to her. We're going to celebrate the career of Weird Al Yankovic with Lily. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay. First, thank you so much for having me speak about this book. Last year I told Kurt Asher, when this book comes out, we need to have a talk with pizza and Twinkies. He and his wonderful team made it happen, and I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you. And to those of you who have come risking community exposure, hopefully this talk will be a nice break from any current anxiety, one of the many psychological benefits of humorous songs and books about them. This book was really something for me. First, I published a book on music during the Holocaust, then a book on music and criminal law, including the issue of music and torture. 2 more books followed, and now here we are, Weird Al, seriously. My CV looks like some sort of joke, punchline unclear, and I love it. I fit no category. I often take on musical categories in my writing. It's nice to know I personally do the same. So today I'm going to read some sections of the book. Here it is, for sale in the back. The cover, you'll notice, was by comic book artist Kelly Phillips. We had the idea for this, kind of composer's bust, only it's Weird Al. Actually, my husband had the idea. He's here in the audience. And I approached Kelly Phillips, asking her to design the cover, so here it is. She's one of the many fans of Weird Al, the many female fans who find him quite handsome. And you'll notice on the cover there's advertised a foreword by none other than Dr. Demento, who might be a name some of you are familiar with. He's actually a scholar himself. He got a master's from UCLA and then became a DJ specializing in demented music, often cover songs, humorous songs, but he was also Weird Al's early mentor. Al himself also cooperated with me on this book. The first time I met Mr. Yankovic was at his home. This was my first interview. I brought with him a gift. Since he invited me to his home, you feel like you need to bring a gift, and this was quite the challenge. What do you bring Weird Al? I decided on some Bakersfield candies. He'd probably never been to Dewar's. And I also brought with me one of my books. I told myself on the way to his house in the Hollywood Hills, do not hand the book to him and say, I hope you don't find any word crimes, if you know that song. Here's him performing the song, Word Crimes. This is a 2014 grammar lesson, a parody of Robin Thicke's Blurred Lines. But, of course, once you tell yourself not to do something and you're nervous, that's exactly what I said. Just blurted it out. I'm sure I made a great first impression. Thankfully, Al has read the final product. He read this book and, quote, in an email to me, loves, loves, loves it. Direct quote, best review of my life. So any bad jokes on my part, the word crimes bit, or the many self-made puns in the book itself were not deal breakers. And I hope they won't be for you. And in that spirit, let's start off with a sampling of some of my personal favorites from the book, jokes even less funny, out of context, a little warm-up before I read the introduction. Okay. a heading in the book for a section on the politics of gun violence and Yankovic's music, including his song Trigger Happy, I titled Clips Don't Lie, a play on Shakira's song Hips Don't Lie. It's a good one. You can laugh if you want. Discussing Yankovic's subtle approach to the issue of gun ownership in Trigger Happy, a song in the spirit of the Beach Boys, I write, quote, with recourse to surf music, he in this way took on gun ownership without making waves. Guess, almost funny, almost. Another heading in a section dealing with Yankovic's famous curly hair references Cyndi Lauper's song Girls Just Want to Have Fun, which Yankovic had parodied as Girls Just Want to Have Lunch. My version in the book is Curls Just Want to Have Fun. Hilarious? No? Okay. And last, but certainly not least, in this tough competition for worst joke, exploring Yankovic's complex treatment of gender, including his rendering of Joan Jett's toughness in the song I Love Rocky Road, I wrote, quote, Yankovic's song then confuses notions of masculinity and femininity as well as the gender divide itself. Gender itself becomes a, rocky road. Huh? It's pretty bad, or so bad it's good. All right, now from the introduction. On May 18th, 2018, Weird Al Yankovic stopped in Turlock, California, a small town in the Central Valley, as part of his ridiculously self-indulgent, ill-advised vanity tour. He performed at the Turlock Community Theater, a local historical landmark that was once a high school auditorium. It was a surprising setting in some ways, hardly the typical pop star destination, but the tour as a whole was meant to be intimate. Quote, like we're just hanging out, playing in your living room, Yankovic explained in a Facebook post. Gone was the over-the-top production that has defined Yankovic's live performance with choreographed video and elaborate costume changes. Despite the casual approach and low-key venue, the energy outside the auditorium was electric. Waiting in line, I first noticed the colors. A woman wearing a dress with a bright lobster print, a middle-aged man in a patterned collared shirt, the motif a collection of golden corgis, a teenage girl with paisley leggings, and on her black at, a standout yellow flower. Though the group was predominantly white, the age range was noteworthy, from the very young to the very old, and many seemed remarkably friendly. As we entered through the heavy doors, the man behind me thanked the volunteer ushers for their help. A young girl in the bathroom stood smiling, wearing brilliant gold shoes. I said to her, cute shoes. She could barely contain her excitement as she lifted her foot towards me, showing me a messy signature in black ink. She had been able to get Yankovic's autograph. When Yankovic appeared on stage with his trademark Hawaiian shirt, the crowd was primed to enjoy the set, a set meant to showcase deep cuts. On the June 24th, 2018 episode of the podcast Comedy Bang Bang, Yankovic described the tour's focus as the songs that were never hits, the ones you barely remember, like She Never Told Me She Was a Mime. But of course, this audience remembered. This audience was devoted, grinning throughout the show, and the warmth was contagious. I found myself smiling as well. When someone yelled, "I love you, Al," Yankovic didn't hesitate. "I love you too, my friend." In a 1999 episode of VH1's Behind the Music, chronicling, Yankovic's career, his longtime bassist Steve J. observed that Yankovic, quote, projects heart. His fans, in turn, love him like a friend, not like a celebrity. To The Hollywood Reporter in 2014, Jay Levy, Yankovic's steadfast manager, made a similar observation, recounting an early experience dining with Yankovic at a pizzeria. Quote, "Eat It" has just been released and has ignited the airwaves. Suddenly, he is recognized everywhere. A small boy, maybe 8 years old, is walking past our table, notices my pieced-up partner, and in an easy, friendly voice says, "Hi, Al," and continues on his way. No gushing, no nervousness, no autographs, just, "Hi, Al," and it's always been like that, end quote. Based on the Turlock show, not much has changed. The audience was once again singing along with Yankovic, their beloved friend. To date, Yankovic has produced 14 studio albums featuring his parody songs, original compositions, and accordion medleys. His most recent, Mandatory Fun 2014, was the first comedy album to debut at #1 on the Billboard Top 200 chart and won him a Grammy Award for Best Comedy Album, adding to a Grammy collection that began in 1984 when Eat It won for Best Comedy Recording. In total, he has had 16 Grammy nominations and 5 wins. There he is, collecting a Grammy, including a Grammy for a special limited edition package, Squeeze Box, the complete works of Weird Al Yankovic. He has had a song in the top 40 in each decade since the 1980s, only the 4th artist to do so. He created the 1989 cult hit film UHF, Al TV on MTV, and The Weird Al Show on CBS in the late 1990s. He has also appeared on The Simpsons, 30 Rock, The Goldbergs, and as co-host and band leader, Comedy Bang Bang on IFC. He's also done voiceover work for a diverse array of animated entertainment, from My Little Pony to Pig Goat Banana Cricket. And this list is woefully incomplete. Since releasing his song, My Bologna, and he recently made it clear he will not do a version called My Corona, a parody of the Knack's My Sharona in 1979, Yankovic has maintained a fame few have rivaled. On the eve of his 60th birthday, he wrapped up his 16th tour. His 15th, the ridiculously self-indulgent one, was a huge success, despite the title's misleading self-deprecation. Most of the 77 shows were sold out. Unless you are already a Weird Al fan, this list of achievements may seem startling, especially based on his press. In 1992, LA Times journalist John D'Agostino declared that Yankovic's shtick was, quote, tiresome. Starting that year, headlines made clear a sort of astonishment that Yankovic was still in music, still going, still weird. An Austin American-Statesman headline from July 13th, 1992 announced, quote, Weird Al's still king of parody. Chicago Tribune 1997, Yankovic still weird, still a master of parody. 14 years later, the headlines had hardly changed. In 2011, the Modesto Bee, quote, performer Weird Al Yankovic still a master of musical manipulation. So why the consistent emphasis on still, the adverbial even now? The still seems to portray a certain insult, as if Yankovic's career was in doubt from the start. Even after several decades of success, the doubt remained. A thriving career seemed to do little to dispel the disbelief about his talent and enduring popularity. Somehow, his success was not enough to prove he was, in fact, successful. When I interviewed Yankovic for the first time in his sleek, modern West Hollywood Hills home in the heat of July, I brought up this consistent still. Yankovic revealed, quote, it's kind of a running joke with me and my crew that every single album that I put out is a comeback album. Laughing, he summed up the sentiment, quote, can you believe it? He's back again. Alongside this astonishment at his success and enduring popularity, other headlines make clear the greater surprise, his ongoing humor and weirdness, the substance of his fame. Not only is Yankovic still going, he's still going in the same vein. In 2003, in the Desert News, yes, Al is still weird and witty. July 16th, 2010, the San Antonio Express News, quote, Yankovic still weird, still funny. On June 12th, 2014, in the Baltimore Sun, Weird Al Yankovic is still laughing. Was Yankovic supposed to do otherwise? Was he supposed to change course, opting for a new sound and style? One headline in the Evansville Courier and Press on May 3rd, 2000 gets at the issue directly. Quote, Al still weird despite his age, end quote. Apparently, Yankovic was expected to grow up and grow out of comedy, or at the very least, opt for more mature jokes about, say, gun violence or war, which he actually did do in Trigger Happy and Christmas at Ground Zero. He wasn't, for heaven's sake, supposed to make more jokes about food. Proof for Chris Willman, writing in the LA Times on July 27, 1992, of a pre-Peter Pan complex, quote, Weird Al Yankovic is willfully stuck in a state of arrested development, way pre-puberty, focusing with the single-minded intensity of an infant on another extremely basic instinct, food, end quote. It's true that Yankovic has repeatedly mined the culture around eating in song. Many of the songs in this category, I Love Rocky Road, Lasagna, Fat, Addicted to Spuds, The White Stuff, Spam, and My Bologna, among others, were brought together in his 1993 The Food album, despite Yankovic's actual misgivings, his feeling that the re-release was just a money grab. Before becoming a vegetarian and sometimes vegan in the early 1990s, he was also often filmed assembling and downing disparate combinations of processed foods in UHF as well as on OWL TV, including his famous Twinkie Wiener sandwich, a hot dog in a Twinkie covered in spray cheese. And his 1984 breakout hit, Eat It, a parody of Michael Jackson's Beat It, for many turned him into the Eat It guy, which remained part of his Twitter handle until very recently. I had to ask him if food symbolized something for him, perhaps comfort or commonality. His answer, I don't even know what the real answer is, he admitted. I've got so many joke answers to that question. I've been a starving artist for so long that I've been obsessed with it. That's one of the jokes. But Yankovic continued, food is universal subject matter. It's a common core of cultural routine, a relatable touchstone for fans of all ages. It's one of those things that everybody can relate to, he said. And in that space, there is just a hint of rebellion, too, as Yankovic champions fare with few, champions, Spam and bologna. Food in Yankovic's music isn't then just food, a basic instinct, it's a means of communication. As philosopher Roland Barthes observed, quote, people may very well continue to believe that food is an immediate reality, necessity, or pleasure, but this does not prevent it from carrying a system of communication, end quote. To be fair, Yankovic has contributed to the rhetoric around his supposed extended adolescence. In the article, Weird Al Still Waiting to Be an Adult, Chatham Daily News, October 6, 1999, Yankovic claimed, quote, I thought by now I'd be an adult and have a real job, end quote. But Yankovic also seems to be working against an expectation of aging, the idea that we become more serious over time. In her 2013 Atlantic article, How Happiness Changes with Age, Heidi Grant Halverson offers some foundation for the assumption. Quote, we all grow up, she writes, and for many of us, what it means to be happy slowly evolves into something completely different. She continues, happiness becomes less the high-energy, totally psyched experience of a teenager partying while his parents are out of town, and more the peaceful, relaxing experience of an overworked mom who's been dreaming of that hot bath all day. According to one study, this sort of transformation reaches its apex, or, quote, peak boring, around 39 for men and 35 for women. Our silliness is then sedate. Yankovic was supposed to follow the pattern, opting for tea over glee. Oh, it's another one of my little jokes. Oh, boy. When I mentioned this supposed natural progression, Yankovic revealed, quote, I'm still more of a shower person than a bath person, though I do a bath every now and then, so at least there's hope. Of course, part of the incredulity around Yankovic's longevity has to do with a musical bias, the idea that true art is serious. Humorous music, in contrast, is seen as frivolous and unworthy, subject to flippant dismissal and irrelevance. As Ian Ellis observed in Rebels with Attitude, it is typically underappreciated and underestimated, unfairly judged, light and trivial. Comedic song is further disparaged as novelty music, an ephemeral art form. As Yankovic says, that's what Yankovic calls it. That specific charge, Yankovic recalls, made it especially difficult to get a record deal at first. Why invest in a musician with little staying power? But humorous music is also seen as somehow less lofty. It's not transcendent art, but music with mass appeal, potato chips for potato chip people. As philosopher Theodor Adorno believed, humor appeals to deformed consciousness and confirms it. Yankovic is well aware of this bias as well as the fallout for the comedic musician. In 2017, he told Randy Lewis of the Los Angeles Times, quote, "Humor is such an important part of the human experience. I just don't know why showcasing it makes people think you're not a real artist." Music scholar Charles Hiroshi Garrett noticed the hierarchy in his study of humor in jazz, concluding that humor in jazz is almost always seen as contrary to the core values of jazz and its artistic legacy. In an interesting twist, analysis of humor in connection to classical music is less of a problem. Comedy in the classical context is more acceptable since the artistic merits of classical music have seemingly been long cemented. Based in notions of the supposed canon or romantic transcendence of the masterworks, classical music can withstand the threat of comedy. British singer Anna Russell, who trained as an opera singer before turning to comedy, was thereby able to parody classical music without undue consequence or negative response. Not only that, her association with classical music may have upped her comedy credentials. Regarding Russell, Garrett claims, ironically, it appears she was marketed as the best in the world at her craft of musical parody, in part because of her engagement with high culture. Yankovic's funny songs play on popular culture rather than music deemed high art. Through parody, he has taken on Chamillionaire, Coolio, Eminem, Queen, George Harrison, Green Day, Iggy, Azalea, James Brown, Madonna, MC Hammer. It's a very long list. Popular rather than classical, these diverse performers have done little to improve Yankovic's artistic standing, nor has his facility on music instruments. In March 2018, Yankovic made his debut on the guitar, playing a cover of Neil Young's Cinnamon Girl, or more specifically, Young's One Note Solo at the Apollo Theater in New York. Yankovic's guitar performance you might have noticed in videos like Smells Like Nirvana and The Saga Begins were actually pretend. But his primary instrument, the one central to his act, is the accordion, an instrument with its own baggage in reception. Yankovic has fun with the issue in the Ask Al forum of his website. He says, quote, "You can never be too rich, too thin, or have too many accordions," end quote. His bold and colorful Hawaiian shirt habit doesn't help either. In 2015, Yankovic told Paul Bowers of the Charleston City paper, quote, "I've always had a love for those kind of shirts, and I'm sure they'll always be associated with me in some way. But looks matter in serious art. Customary concert dress is black, sometimes formal tails, the opposite of the casual pattern display associated with the traditional Hawaiian or aloha shirt. Yankovic has a home in Hawaii, and with it some connection to the shirt's serious side, an artistic, spiritual, and multi-ethnic history. But the flip side, far more prevalent, is the shirt standing as a symbol of the tacky tourist. The shirt, let's face it, is leisure wear, the antithesis of high fashion. Every day can be Casual Friday when you're Weird Al, and it's hard to take anyone seriously on Casual Friday. In a 2013 interview for the Omaha World Herald, writer Kevin Coffey told Yankovic, "You and your band are tight players." Yankovic responded, "I really appreciate that. A lot of people, because it's comedy, they think it's maybe not up to par or not as good as serious music." One side effect of this perception is Yankovic's aversion to karaoke, though he did make an exception for James Corden's popular carpool karaoke. Quote, "My detractors or some reviewers that have been less than kind in the past have referred to me as a glorified karaoke act. So that sticks in my mind, and if I were to do karaoke, I just wouldn't be able to enjoy it as much as other people." In our first conversation, Yankovic shared a question that has often bothered him, an insult embedded in a compliment. "You're so good at what you do, have you ever thought about doing real music?" He balances the dismissal with his own commitment to what he does and who he is. Quote, "Well, I enjoy doing what I do. I love the genre that I've chosen and the career that I've carved out for myself. So I don't feel like I'm excluded, but I definitely feel like doing comedy music puts me in a category where I'm second class," end quote. His recourse to the music of others, part of parody, has done little to dissuade the naysayers. Writing on the topic, John Thomerson defines parody as a new work created through musical borrowing. Like cover songs, parody songs can be seen as derivative, less creative than original art. In her study of parody, Linda Hutchione colorfully clarifies the issue. Parody is, quote, the Philistine enemy of creative genius and vital originality, end quote. It has even been called parasitic, implying a certain malice. Parody supposedly exploits its host. Hutchione contextualizes the criticism. Quote, what is clear from these sort of attacks is the continuing strength of a romantic aesthetic that values genius, originality, and individuality. The real artistic genius is supposed to create from nothing, like a god. Their art has no model, no earthly point of origin. In part, capitalism drives this thinking then and now, a desire to commodify and possess art. How do you determine the ownership of art reliant on the work of others? But these notions of humor and parody in music are misleading, and they distract from the serious impact and meaning of Yankovic's music. Humor has purpose, as does parody. As Garrett writes of jazz, humor assumes a variety of shapes, as a mask for social critique, a display of karmic artistry, a mode of communication, a fount of pleasure, and sometimes all of these at once. As a social phenomenon, humor reveals much about the society that in turn laughs, and can even influence social values and meaning. Jokes are also everywhere. They are part of our everyday social interaction, breaking the ice in so many different contexts, and a shared sense of humor can create a powerful bond. Cheap and easy, humor itself is a sort of universal health care. It provides relief, often an audible release, and that laugh can lower stress, changing the body's chemistry for the better. It can also offer much-needed psychological uplift. Yankovic told Sharp magazine, quote, I've had more than a few people come up to me and say they were in a very bad place in their life. Some of them were suicidal, in fact. And listening to my music snapped them out of it. They were able to move on and get through whatever somber phase they were in. Sometimes when I think what I do is somewhat pointless, I remember those people and how even my stupid music served a real function for them. Parody, for its part, plays many roles. It can denigrate, criticize, and mock. It can be funny and playful. It can also offer up tribute or homage. With these various intents, parody has been a major force in art in a variety of historical contexts and genres, from ancient Greece to hip-hop. Today, it too is omnipresent, central to American popular music. As Thomerson maintains, parody is the compositional technique most familiar in the musical experience of Americans. In 2014, Yankovic himself pointed out just how American parody really is, explaining that the national anthem is itself a parody. Its composer, the lawyer Francis Scott Key, borrowed the tune from an Old English drinking song. As a technique, parody is also no less creative and original than so-called original art. To varying degrees, in fact, all art relies on preceding works, existing practice, and cultural customs. We create by responding to our surrounding culture, making certain decisions about the art we already know. Has there ever been a so-called original composer or musical tradition? Does the lone artistic genius even exist? Maybe not. Philosophers and writers, like artists, build on past work, molding existing patterns of thought. This book, in some respects, could then be viewed as a parody. I'm writing an introduction, which you are now hearing me read. It's an established part of a book's formula, table of context, introduction, and so on. I'm obviously aware of preceding norms, but I may be using them in my own way. After the introduction, you might find chapter fun, complete with a nauseating repetition of the professor-author's favorite words, discourse, Derrida, and much, much more. Is this work a reliable retread of previous convention, or is it a flippant subversion of the academic study, an academic book instead? That's another joke there. That's good, yeah. In 1994, the U.S. Supreme Court in Campbell v. Ackoff-Rose showed some awareness of parody's value. The case alleged that rap group Two Live Crew's song Pretty Woman violated copyright as a parody of songwriter Roy Orbison's Oh Pretty Woman. But the court reasoned that parody can provide social benefit by shedding light on an earlier work and in the process creating a new one. Building on the 1976 Copyright Act, the court in the end ruled parody, like other comment and criticism, may claim fair use. For this reason, Yankovic is not legally required to seek out permission for his parodies from the original artists, and by original I mean initial, not lone genius, and yet he does, careful to stay in good standing with his fellow artists. Yankovic, then, has established a unique place in music. For many, he is synonymous with parody itself. As Yankovic himself confirmed in an interview on December 20th, 2018 in Hot Ones, if it's a parody, it's Al. A tasteless spoof of Childish Gambino's This Is America played on that assumption, implicating Yankovic in a controversial parody, This Is My Hair I Cut, for which he was not responsible. And the song was certainly not the first offensive parody wrongly credited to Yankovic. For better and for worse, he's the unrivaled prince, even king of pop parody. DJ and Yankovic mentor Barry Hansen, better known as Dr. Demento, has a matchless grasp on the world of humorous music, with his long-running syndicated radio show spotlighting comedy and music. In 2003, he dubbed Yankovic the Beatles of my little genre. In 2017, he clarified, comedy recording and funny songs go back to the earliest days of the record industry. But Al is unique. There's nothing like him in the history of funny music. Part of that distinction is Yankovic's enduring fame and his long career, which is a credit to his music and Yankovic himself. In 2014, in The Hollywood Reporter, manager Jay Levy explained, quote, "The story of Al's longevity as an artist begins and ends with his work. Look, I mean really look at the quality of his wordplay, cleverness, intelligence, innovative rhyming, and musicality. So let's do just that. Look, really look at Yankovic's work. Let's listen and really talk about the various aspects of Yankovic's art that merit serious attention. Of course, long-held pseudo-wisdom says let's not. As A.B. White famously maintained, explaining a joke is like dissecting a frog. You understand it better, but the frog dies in the process. And there's similar thinking about talk and music. Romantic composer Robert Schumann believed that the best way to talk about music is to be quiet about it. To me, both quoted lines seem fear-based, motivated by a desire to protect a purity in art that does not exist. An unfiltered joke or musical score is a fallacy. Comedy and music depend on performance. And in performance, an entertainer must interpret the joke or music in some way. Not only that, this thinking supports a worn-out cycle worthy of Joseph Heller. We do not take comedic music seriously because we cannot talk about it seriously. And we cannot talk about it seriously because it's comedic music. As Jeremy Dauber wrote in Jewish Comedy, A Serious Study, you want a joke book, buy a joke book. I'll take my own cue from the movie The Princess Bride. Frog, I say, you killed my father, prepare to die. As you will see in this book, if you buy it in the back, Yankovic's vast output builds on a rich and ongoing American tradition of parody song with many levels of meaning, often at the same time. His songs, including his original compositions, make us laugh, but also have a point of view, be it on society, popular culture, politics, race, gender, fame, or words themselves. In his 14 studio albums, Yankovic is also a master of both musical insult and self-insult, though he maintains a reputation as one of the music industry's good guys. In today's age of incivility, political and otherwise, this nice guy persona stands out and has helped win him fiercely loyal fans who have found in his music a certain acceptance and affirmation. This book is for those fans, the young girl with autographed gold shoes, but the book also invites music enthusiasts of all stripes to consider and reconsider Yankovic's music, as well as the assorted possibilities of parody and comedy in music, weighty and light, profound and far from it. No laughing, though. This is Weird Al, seriously. Thank you. Are there any questions, if we have time? Yes? Yes, he was very nice. He invited me to his home, which was rather brave since he'd never even spoken to me on the phone. He offered me something to drink when I got there, which I felt bad even asking of him. And when I interviewed him, he was not distracted at all. Sometimes I've interviewed people and, calls are happening. They're distracted by other things. But he was fully engaged, and he's been really helpful throughout this process. I did send him the proofs before the book was finished to make sure he was okay with everything. And I didn't have to do that. It wasn't a part of the contract, but I just wanted to. And he was really great. He went through and he proofed it. He found grammatical errors, and he was just wonderfully helpful all the way around. A very nice person. Yes? I prepared in a flurry. I needed the interview to get the book contract, and I needed the book contract to get the interview. So I prepared everything very quickly by getting my hands on every single thing I could, every article, every video, every online interview, and then just kind of noticing patterns in his music. I listened through his music, and I was noticing certain themes, and I realized I was probably going to divide the book up based on those themes, so I was going to need questions based on those. And so I had a long list of questions when I got there. I was rather nervous, and I was surprised by that because I have interviewed people before. Just something about him. He looks just the way he looks, and he's tall, and I became very nervous. So normally when I've interviewed, I'm able to think off the top of my head additional follow-up questions, but in this case, I was not able to think coherently. But the questions worked, and they did let me do a follow-up interview by phone, and I was also able to email him later on. So I had a chance to get those last-minute questions. Yes? No. Yes. Yeah, in the book, I didn't talk about them today, but yes, he has a lot of influences, and it's some of the great parody writers of the past, like Spike Jones and Tom Lehrer and Alan Sherman, but also Mad Magazine is a big influence in some of these other writers. He mentioned Dr. Seuss. He mentioned The Twilight Zone, the TV show. So there are lots of different influences that kind of inform his style. Yes? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it was really interesting to talk to him about this particular topic because he wants to, be nice, and he doesn't often want to get very political. I have a whole chapter about politics in his music, and he was not as helpful with that chapter because he doesn't want to offend people. He wants to have a wide audience, so he's not the Randy Rainbow. He wants to be really careful there, but there are certain things that he's written over time that have become offensive, that he didn't mean to have happen. So in even word crimes, he uses the word spastic, and he did not realize that that's a real slur, especially in the UK, and he was very apologetic around that word. The word midget is a word that he's used quite a bit that now he apologizes for. There's lots of moments like that have kind of crept up on him. I did bring up the issue, the Pretty Fly for a Rabbi is a pretty hilarious song, but it plays on this idea that Jews are very into money. So I had to bring that up to him. When he wrote that in the 90s, there were other kind of Jewish singers stressing that as kind of an inside joke, and it was all about kind of marking the Jew as a cultural entity, which was important at a time of assimilation. But I feel like now that doesn't play so well with the rise of visible anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism has always been there, but it's more visible now. So that song doesn't play in the same way. He also talked about Trigger Happy being a song. He does take on gun violence. He is anti-gun in that song, but people don't always get the joke. Some people think he's actually celebrating gun ownership in that song, and he's been careful of that song after the outbreak of shootings we've had. So the humor doesn't play in the same way. He's actually listed a lot of different moments like that he's been aware of. The Nirvana song after Kurt Cobain's suicide. There's a lot of songs that kind of have come back to him, and he's had to. Oh, and even Michael Jackson. He used to have his Twitter handle the Eat It Guy, and with this latest documentary and the problems around, we all know what's happening there. He doesn't want that He changed his Twitter handle, and on the last concert tour, he didn't play those songs, and those are some of his most famous songs. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's true. I didn't make that point, but that's a very good point. No, he did not bring that. He didn't say that. In general, the serious stuff, I would read all these things into the work, and he would never invalidate anything, but he didn't always build on it because he still wants the jokes to play. But he didn't make that point, and that's a really good one. That serious, you might dismiss this as a light, but then if you say something offensive, you're in big trouble. That's a very good point that I'm going to use in future writing. Yeah, it's a good one. Anyone else? Okay, the little girl in the front. Go ahead. Ooh, I didn't ask him. I did not ask him a favorite song. I think he has fun with the song Albuquerque. That Albuquerque song, he wrote that not thinking that would be a hit. He purposely wrote that so long that this will never be a hit. And then it's weirdly become one of his big hits. If you know this song, it's very, very long, and it's very, very crazy. So many things happen in this song, from weasels and crazy antics at a donut store, a fiery plane crash. It's quite the saga. And that was not meant to be a hit, and it became one. So I think he's amused by things like that. But I did not ask him if he has a favorite song. That's a good one. I should interview him again. The little boy in the front. Ooh, that's a good one. He started lessons. It was right around when he was 7 years old he started lessons. And he didn't take lessons for very long. It was just a year or so, but he got very good on his own. Yeah, it was a traveling salesperson. I guess there was a period where door-to-door people sold you accordion lessons. Kind of remarkable. Anyone else besides the two cute children in the front? Yes.
Now I'm just wondering, with all the stakes and stuff, I was wondering, there's let's say the next generation, I was wondering who would be able to step up to be the next, which I put this Yankovic 2.0.
Yeah, that's a really tough one because we did talk about how culture has changed, how you hear music has changed. He made 2014 his last album in part because he doesn't think that album format is going to work anymore. And also for what he does with parodies, you want to get it out quick so it's relevant. So the downloads or YouTube, that's where you're seeing a lot of comedic music now, is just a person does it and puts it out immediately, like Randy Rainbow. But because so many people can do that now, it's hard to imagine anyone just emerging as the Yankovic. But if that happens, they're going to have to be really shrewd. One thing Yankovic did, and this is very unusual, there's the past comedic musicians like Alan Sherman and Tom Lehrer, they had short careers. Yankovic has had this 40-plus year career, and part of it has been changing with technology. He's been very smart about his music and trying to adapt to new developments in technology. It's hard to stay relevant in music for as long as he has. So if there will be another Yankovic, and it's hard to imagine because of the noise that is everywhere on the internet, they're going to have to be very smart. Don't grow up. Well, be true to yourself. I think that's everywhere in his music. So many of those songs are about following your own model and being your own self. And his fans, the fans that have been in touch, have been these wonderful people that are just happy to be themselves and happy to have that safe space that he creates to just dare to be stupid. All right, little girl, go ahead. We just had that question, age 7. Okay, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoy the pizza, and thank you for having me. Yay.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you very much to Eileen Montoya and Aida Asher for serving the pizzas. There's still more, so help yourself. We've got, have some more Twinkies, have some more pie, just